Have you ever wondered why Germany, one of the most powerful economies in the world, is still so reluctant when it comes to credit cards? While Americans swipe, tap, and rack up points like it's second nature, many Germans would rather stick to cash or their trusty Girocard. It's not just about technology, it's about culture, history, and the way money is viewed. Today, let's break down the real reasons why Germans don't like credit cards, and why this might actually be a smarter way of handling money than most people think. One of the biggest reasons Germans don't like credit cards comes down to mindset. In Germany, debt is something people genuinely try to avoid. It's not just about money, it's about culture, history, and the way people are raised to think about responsibility. Growing up, many Germans are taught that you should only buy what you can actually afford. If you don't have the money today, you wait, you save, and then you buy it later. The idea of borrowing money just to fund everyday spending feels unnecessary, even irresponsible. Part of this comes from the country's history. Older generations in Germany lived through times of extreme financial instability, including hyperinflation in the 1920s and the economic struggles after World War II. Back then, debt could ruin entire families. Even today, that cautious attitude toward borrowing has been passed down. While younger people are often more open to new payment methods, the cultural skepticism about debt is still strong. Another important piece is how Germans see financial freedom. In many countries, especially the US, credit is seen as a tool that gives you flexibility. You don't have the money today? No problem. Just swipe the card and worry about it later. But in Germany, financial freedom means not owing anyone anything. Carrying debt, even short-term, feels like a chain around your neck. That's why Germans are more comfortable saving up for big purchases instead of financing them. If you look at statistics, credit card usage is way lower in Germany than in the US or the UK. For many Germans, credit cards are associated with high-interest debt, late fees, and overspending. And since most people prefer to live within their means, they see no reason to open themselves up to that risk. Instead, they rely on debit cards, direct bank transfers, or even cash, which all keep spending firmly tied to what's actually available in their account. There's also a social element. Talking about money in Germany is often private, but when debt comes up, it usually carries a negative stigma. Someone buried in credit card bills might be seen as reckless or irresponsible. This reinforces the idea that it's better to avoid the temptation altogether. So while credit cards are technically available, they don't have the same normal status that they do in other countries. In the US, not having a credit card can even hurt your ability to rent an apartment or build a credit score. In Germany, that pressure doesn't exist. Most landlords don't care about credit card history, and financial identity is tied to other systems. Because of that, Germans don't feel pushed to adopt credit cards just to fit into the financial system. At the end of the day, the German view on debt is less about being old-fashioned and more about long-term security. The cultural lesson is simple. If you can't pay for it right now, you probably don't need it. And that's a big reason why Germans don't swipe credit cards the way other countries do. If you've ever lived in Germany or even just traveled there, you've probably heard of the Girocard. It looks like a regular bank card, but it works differently from the credit card system most people know. And for many Germans, the Girocard is all they really need. One of the main reasons credit cards never caught on in a big way. Here's how it works. A Girocard is linked directly to your bank account. When you pay for something, the money comes straight out of your account, like a debit card. That means no carrying a balance, no interest rates, and no debt. For Germans who want to stay in control of their spending, this system fits perfectly with their financial philosophy. The Girocard is also incredibly widespread. Unlike credit cards, which might be refused at smaller shops or bakeries, the Girocard is accepted almost everywhere in Germany. It's become the default payment method for millions of people. In fact, many Germans don't even see the need to carry a credit card because the Girocard covers nearly every situation they face in daily life. One of the reasons the system works so well is the trust people place in their local banks. Germany has a strong network of regional banks, savings banks, and cooperatives that issue these Girocards. Customers often feel more secure using them because it's a direct connection with their trusted local bank, not a global corporation like Visa or MasterCard. That adds an extra layer of comfort for people who value financial stability. There's also a structural reason behind the Girocard's dominance: merchant fees. Credit cards usually charge businesses higher processing fees, which discourages small shops from accepting them. Girocard transactions, on the other hand, are cheaper for merchants. That's why when you walk into a small cafe in Berlin or Munich, they'll happily take your Girocard, but may still refuse your Visa or American Express. Over time, this has reinforced the Girocard as the normal way to pay. Another interesting point is how this impacts financial behavior. Since payments come directly from a checking account, people always see their real balance. That prevents overspending and encourages more conscious financial decisions. It's the opposite of the buy now, pay later mindset. Germans get immediate feedback about their spending, which lines up perfectly with their debt-averse culture. Of course, Girocards aren't perfect. They don't usually work as well outside of Germany, which is why many Germans still carry a credit card when they travel abroad. Online shopping can also be trickier, since international websites often require a Visa or MasterCard. But for daily life inside Germany, the Girocard is the king of payment systems. In the end, the power of the Girocard shows why Germans don't feel the same attraction to credit cards that other countries do. They already have a payment method that's simple, widely accepted, and aligned with their values of financial responsibility. Why complicate things with credit cards when the Girocard system already does the job? One of the big reasons credit cards exploded in countries like the United States is because of rewards, cashback, travel points, free flights, airport lounges, discounts. Credit card companies have turned spending into a game. In America, it's almost normal to hear someone brag about flying to Europe for free thanks to miles from their credit card. But in Germany, that kind of rewards culture simply doesn't exist on the same scale, and it's a huge part of why people aren't interested in credit cards. Most German credit cards don't offer flashy perks. At best, you might get a small amount of cash back or a modest points system, but nothing close to the benefits you'd find in the US. This is partly because German banking regulations are stricter, making it harder for banks to profit from the kinds of fees that fund big rewards programs elsewhere. Without attractive incentives, credit cards just feel like an extra product that doesn't really give you anything in return. And let's be honest, Germans aren't usually motivated by spend more, get more schemes. There's a cultural difference here. In the US, the idea of maximizing points, hacking credit card bonuses, or finding the best cashback deals has become almost a sport. In Germany, many people view that mindset as wasteful. Why jump through hoops to collect points when you can simply avoid spending money in the first place? The frugal mindset runs deep, and credit card perks don't really change that. There's also the issue of interest rates and fees. Many Germans see credit cards as expensive tools. If you miss a payment, the interest can be high, and the banks may charge annual fees even if you don't use the card often. Compare that to a Girocard, which has no annual fee and no interest because it's tied directly to your bank account. For practical thinkers, it makes no sense to pay for something that offers so little value. Even international cards that offer rewards don't find as big a market in Germany. The average person doesn't travel as frequently as in the US, so things like airline miles or hotel points don't sound nearly as appealing. A free domestic train ticket or a small discount at a grocery store doesn't create the same excitement as a free international vacation. On top of that, the German consumer protection system and financial environment already provide a lot of security. People don't feel the same need for credit card protections like purchase insurance, fraud guarantees, or rental car coverage because other systems already handle those concerns fairly well. This reduces the extra benefits argument that credit card companies use to attract customers. So when you put it all together, credit cards in Germany simply don't offer enough to make them worth it. There are no big rewards, no flashy perks, and no strong incentives to change habits. For most Germans, the appeal is too limited, and without that added value, the credit card ends up being just another unnecessary financial product. If there's one stereotype about Germans and money that holds true, it's this. They love cash. Walk into a bakery in Munich, a cafe in Hamburg, or even a restaurant in Berlin, and you'll probably still see people pulling out paper euros to pay for their purchases. While many countries have raced toward a cashless society, Germany has held on to coins and bills with surprising loyalty. And this love for cash is another big reason why credit cards never became dominant. There are a few deep cultural reasons behind this. First, Germans value privacy. Using cash leaves no digital trail, no records for banks or companies to track. This gives people a sense of control over their own financial information. In a country with a history of surveillance during both the Nazi and East German regimes, it makes sense that many still prefer payment methods that keep their data private. Paying with cash feels safe, anonymous, and independent. Second, cash gives people a physical connection to their spending. Handing over a €50 note feels very different from tapping a card. Psychologically, it makes you more aware of the money leaving your hands, and that awareness helps control spending. For Germans, this fits perfectly with the cultural emphasis on frugality and avoiding debt. With cash, it's almost impossible to spend money you don't actually have. There's also a practical side. For decades, many small businesses in Germany either refused to accept credit cards or added extra fees to cover transaction costs. Even today, some corner shops, small restaurants, or family-owned bakeries are cash only. This reinforces the habit. If you always need cash in your pocket to cover daily life, it becomes second nature. Credit cards, meanwhile, feel unnecessary for most purchases. During the pandemic, there was a noticeable shift. Contactless payments and card usage grew significantly, and younger generations especially have become more comfortable with digital wallets and apps. But even with those changes, cash remains deeply rooted in the culture. Surveys show that Germans still withdraw cash regularly and prefer it for smaller purchases under €50. Another interesting point is the trust factor. In many countries, people worry about fraud, identity theft, or hidden charges when using cards. Cash, on the other hand, has no hidden rules. What you see is what you get. For a population that values transparency and reliability, that makes cash a very attractive option. There's also a symbolic side. Carrying cash signals independence. You don't rely on banks, systems, or technology to function. If a payment terminal goes down, cash still works. If the power is out, cash still works. This reliability has kept cash relevant in Germany long after other countries abandoned it. So even though credit cards exist, they've had a tough time competing with the strong cash culture. Germans trust it. They value the control it gives. And they're used to a world where coins and notes still rule everyday transactions. In Germany, cash is more than just money. It's a symbol of stability and independence. And that's why it remains king. In Germany, credit cards aren't really seen as an everyday tool for buying groceries, coffee, or small items. Instead, they're more like a special-purpose financial product, something you pull out when you're traveling abroad, renting a car, or booking a hotel online. For daily life inside Germany, most people stick to cash or their Girocard. This division in usage explains a lot about why credit cards feel unnecessary to the average German consumer. Let's start with daily shopping. In many supermarkets, cafes, or small shops, you'll see signs proudly stating EC-Karte, the German debit system, or cash only. Even in places that technically accept credit cards, the staff might prefer if you use debit or cash. Because of that, people never got into the habit of swiping their credit card for basic things like milk and bread. Over time, this reinforced the idea that credit cards are not for daily life. But when it comes to travel, credit cards suddenly become essential. If you want to book a flight, reserve a hotel, or rent a car, most international companies require a Visa or MasterCard. Debit cards often don't work in those situations. That's why many Germans keep a credit card in their wallet, but they only dust it off when they leave the country or shop online from international retailers. It's like having a tool you don't use often, but you know you'll need it eventually. This selective use also reflects the German mindset about control. By keeping credit cards reserved for travel or emergencies, people avoid the temptation of everyday debt. They know that using a credit card for groceries could lead to overspending, but using it for a flight ticket makes sense. In other words, it's about drawing boundaries. Credit for big, unavoidable expenses, cash or debit for everything else. It's also worth noting that German banks often issue charge cards rather than true revolving credit cards. With these, the balance is paid in full at the end of the month, meaning there's no option to carry debt long term. That fits perfectly with the cultural view that credit should be temporary, not a lifestyle. So while Americans might swipe their credit cards 10 times a day, Germans often carry them for very specific situations. For groceries, cafes, and everyday spending, they'll stick to what feels safer and more familiar. But when it's time to board a plane or pick up a rental car in another country, that little piece of plastic suddenly becomes very important. So when you look at it all together, it makes sense why Germans don't really embrace credit cards. For them, debt feels dangerous. The Girocard system already works perfectly. Rewards aren't tempting enough. Cash is still a trusted favorite, and credit cards are mostly seen as tools for travel, not daily life. It's not that Germans are behind. It's that their system is built around control, stability, and living within their means. Maybe that's the real takeaway here. While some countries chase points, cashback, and flashy perks, Germany shows us a different path. One where money isn't about convenience or rewards, but about security and responsibility. And honestly, there's a lot we could all learn from that. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around. I've got plenty more money stories from around the world coming your way.